Right. Well, let's look quickly at the future of missions just for a moment. As we mentioned before, the percent of the world's population considered unevangelized has decreased from 50% to around 29%. And we really do celebrate this. But, and you know analysts and researchers are always going to throw in the but. Due to population growth, the number of unevangelized individuals has actually increased by over 600 million in that same time frame. Every day, there are more and more unevangelized individuals on planet Earth. Those populations are multiplying faster than they are being reached with the gospel. We are actually losing ground, and this is a massive challenge for our generation and for the church.
And those unevangelized are concentrated in places of religious strongholds, and they're concentrated in places of poverty, places that are difficult to access for outsiders. And so the challenge is very real, and the need is much more than just spiritual.
Although 1 in 6 people globally live in slums, that's over 1 billion people, by the way, it's less than 1 in 500 Christian mission workers that works in a slum. And when it comes to national workers, such as pastors, it's more like 1 in 10,000 that works in a slum. Few want to live there, few choose to live there, but out of the 200,000 people every day making their way to cities, about 80% of them end up in a slum setting. If we want to reach the unreached, these are some of the places we need to go.
And yet, another but, half the world almost is still rural. The majority of the unevangelized are still rural. The majority of the poor are living in rural contexts. So we cannot abandon rural ministry completely. We need to have both eyes open to both contexts. Migrants, 232 million of them in the world. If they were a country, they would be the 5th largest country in the world by population. The average stay in a refugee camp, 17 years. These are not camps, they're cities. People are born there, and they live there, and they die there, and they never hear the gospel once in a refugee camp.
Right. Well, we've been sending a lot of facts and figures your way, but this next one we gave its very own slide, and that's going to come up hopefully in a second here, because we want you to walk away remembering this one. It is estimated that 81% of the world's non-Christians do not personally know a Christian. 81%. For hundreds of millions of people, we are the only gospel they may ever encounter. And that's because many of those same people also lack access to the gospel in their own language in any form. There may be Christians in every country now, but the spread is far from even. Christians are over 90% some places, but less than 1/100th of 1% in other places.
Why don't you read that quote from William Carey? He sums it up better than we ever could.
Okay. He wrote that one of the first and most important of those duties which are incumbent upon us is fervent and united prayer, the most glorious works of grace that have ever took place have been in answer to prayer. And it is in this way we have the greatest reason to suppose that the glorious outpouring of the Spirit, which we expect at last, will be bestowed. Many can do nothing but pray, and prayer is perhaps the only thing in which Christians of all denominations can cordially and unreservedly unite.
It's our responsibility in our generation to make sure that no community, no people group, no country, no context goes without experiencing, hearing, and seeing the gospel. There's no magic bullet for this. There's no shortcut. It's the tough slog of discipleship and of making disciples throughout the body of Christ, throughout the world. To convince an increasingly hostile world of the truth of the gospel, we have to radically demonstrate the power and the love of the gospel. We need to be different than any of the solutions that are out there in the world. We need to be demonstrably different. This is going to be costly. It's going to be difficult, but we can do it. We must do it because the King of Kings has commanded us to do it. We must obey. But we can do it because the one who has all authority in heaven and on earth has commissioned us to do it, and therefore we can.